Hello, folks. Welcome. Good to see you. Thanks for coming and thanks for joining us at this live event. Just setting up the stream here. Give me 1 second. We're going live because of the events that are happening in the world. Big news today with the first US long-range missiles now being used to fire into Russian territory. This has been a big story today. Good to have you with us. Just waiting for people to come into the live. If you're watching this as a rerun, please do join us when we go live so you can watch our live events. And if you subscribe and click the notification bell to all notifications, you will get notified the moment we do go live. And if you're just joining us also, please do like the live video. And share it if you can so more people can see the content. It really helps us to get our content out there with these new live news coverages of different things going on across the world, of the world events in the season that we're in. So please do come in and gather. That's great. Good to see you, the people coming in live. So I wanted to cover this current emerging situation that's going on. With a lot of people talking about this today, that now not only did Biden approve the long-range missiles to be used to fire into to Russian territory, but that actually has happened already. So Ukraine strikes Russia with US-made long-range missiles for first time. Weapons arsenal in Bryansk hit after Biden administration lifts restrictions on Kyiv's use of ATACMs. So I don't know why Drew H is saying hearsay. This is not hearsay. This is official sources. This is really not hearsay. This is clearly not just a Telegram post, as it's all over the place, and the official, announcements are being made. We are going to be going to the Pentagon briefing, which is happening in 12 minutes. So you'll be able to see that live on here. I assume they're going to be talking about this at the Pentagon. So that's going to be happening in just about 12 minutes. We will be going to there on the live show here. So we'll see that. But I just wanted to show you a few things before that starts. As I said, it says Ukraine has struck a military target inside Russia using US-made long-range missiles for the first time since Joe Biden's administration lifted restrictions on their use, according to Ukrainian officials. The depot is 190 kilometers north of the front line in the neighboring Kursk region, where Russian forces are trying to push out Ukrainian troops. But this was also related, if you remember, to North Korean troops being sent to Ukraine in the Kursk region as well. So that's also been going on. We'll cover that as I show you a few of these things. This one was posted yesterday. Putin threatens to strike back if UK and US arms hit Russian territory. So there's been threats going backward and forward. Putin has threatened to strike back if they're used. Of course, we don't always know whether some of these things are like saber rattling or if they're actually the case. But UK expected also to give Ukraine Storm Shadow missiles to strike inside Russia. So it may be the case that the UK seems to be following suit with the US to allow Ukraine also to use UK-made weapons. So Keir Starmer appears to be following suit in terms of also allowing the UK weapons to be used as well as the US weapons. So that's Britain is expected to supply Storm Shadow missiles for use by Ukraine on targets inside Russia now that the US President Joe Biden has agreed to do the same for the similar American long-range weapon. Keir Starmer, Prime Minister of the UK, said at the G20 summit that the UK recognised it needed to double down on its support for Ukraine, while diplomatic sources briefed they expected other European countries to follow the US lead. Wow, so maybe even more countries might allow the same thing. The Prime Minister said that while he was not going to get into operational details, he recognised that the need to do more to help Ukraine, whose electricity network was seriously damaged by a wave of Russian bombing on Sunday. It's been really clear for a long time now that we need to double down. We need to make sure Ukraine has what is necessary for as long as necessary, because we can't allow Putin to win this war, the Prime Minister said. And so they've also been concerned that that America's support for this might change when Donald Trump enters the White House. So that's something else that may be affecting some of these developments at the moment. So I think they're not sure that whether Donald Trump will continue to support Ukraine against Russia, and so some of this has been unfolding, right? I don't know if you saw this, but this just happened as well. Or this has been coming out today, that Nordic neighbours release new advice on surviving war. Been in a few sources that's like Sweden tells 5 million households how to survive World War III in new war pamphlet. But interesting timing. But this also happened, that Sweden and Finland tell millions of citizens how to be prepared in the case of war and crisis. The Nordic neighbours have published updated guidance today detailing what to do in the case of a conflict. It comes just hours after US allowed Ukraine to use its long-range weapons to strike inside Russia. The move was criticised by Russian politicians and Donald Trump Jr., who wrote on X, "Military-industrial complex seems to want to make sure they get World War III going." And you see a few of these articles on this. Sweden tells citizens to prepare for war. 5 million households get pamphlets on how to get their home ready for nuclear Armageddon, as Biden is accused of trying to start World War III. So, yeah, this has been happening in the Nordic nations. I don't know whether that... because, I guess they were going to send them out today, regardless of what was announced yesterday, because it seems too quick to happen. But it just shows there's a general kind of atmosphere, at least, doesn't there, that there's concern about the current situation in the world and what's going on. So yeah, there's obviously concern in the world about, and especially in that region, about the things that are going on. And Reuters here, it says Putin issues warning to United States with new nuclear doctrine. This was posted today, 4 hours ago. Putin approves new nuclear doctrine. Kremlin says this is a signal to the West. Russia lowers nuclear threshold and says that the US missiles were fired into Russia. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday lowered the threshold for a nuclear strike in response to a broader range of conventional attacks. And Moscow said Ukraine had struck deep inside Russia with US-made missiles. Putin approved the change days after 2 US officials and a source familiar with the decision said on Sunday that US President Joe Biden's administration allowed Ukraine to use the US-made weapons to strike deep inside Russia. Russia had been warning the West for months that if Washington allowed Ukraine to fire US, British and French missiles deep into Russia, Moscow would consider those NATO members to be directly involved in the war in Ukraine. The updated Russian nuclear doctrine, establishing a framework for conditions under which Putin could order a strike from the world's biggest nuclear arsenal, was approved by him on Tuesday, according to a published decree. So, yeah, that's been going on there, and also this in the Telegraph I wanted to show you today. This was also today, just a few hours ago. Well, no, actually about half an hour ago. Vladimir Putin signalled on Tuesday that he was ready to start a nuclear war after Ukraine struck Russia with Western missiles for the first time. So Putin signals readiness to start nuclear war. By basically the same thing, by signing into law a new nuclear doctrine that lowers threshold for Russia to use atomic weapons. Kiev fired US-made missiles in an ammunition dump near Bryansk in southern Russia, roughly 100 miles from the border, shortly before dawn. Video footage showed the facility bursting into flames with a telltale trail of white smoke above the explosion, indicating the use of a missile. Zelensky has long pleaded for Western leaders to grant his forces the right to use long-range missiles, such as those used against the targets inside Russian territory. And Joe Biden finally relented on Monday, according to reports citing the entry of North Korean troops to the battlefield. So that seems to have triggered an attitude change in the sense that North Korean troops, are now inside Russia, because Russia has called upon all these North Korean troops to join in the fight against Ukraine. And many of those, I think it was 10 or so thousand of them, a number of them at least, were in the Kursk area, which is just by the border of Ukraine. And that's kind of changed some of the trajectory in which this is currently going. But then there's also this, which is now saying North Korea might send 100,000 troops and transfer long-range weapons to Russia. China, despite its denials, is also arming Russia. Now, there might be a slight bias there in terms of this being Ukrainian source, but still, that's what's being discussed. I'm just showing you. So according to them, they believe that North Korea might send 100,000 troops and transfer long-range weapons to Russia. North Korea may deploy up to 100,000 soldiers to help Russia in its war against Ukraine. According to Bloomberg, this military support is likely to occur in stages with troop rotation over time rather than a one-time deployment. Meanwhile, according to Ukrainian intelligence, Russia has received long-range missile and artillery systems from North Korea. Some of them were sent to the Kursk region. Moreover, it has been revealed that for the first time, China handed over weapons to the Russian Federation for the war against Ukraine. China declares itself a neutral party and has repeatedly stated that it does not send lethal aid to either side. In response, the EU is considering introducing sanctions against China. Thank you, Chow Young Cat. I much appreciate the super chat. Thank you for supporting the stream. And then lastly, I just want to show you the Pentagon briefing should be happening in just a couple of minutes, so we'll try to go over there. North Korean troops enter Kursk, where Ukrainians are fighting, and now they say it's likely that about 11,000 North Korean troops have been moved into Russia's Kursk region, said Deputy Pentagon Press Secretary Sabrina Singh, who spoke to the media today. The Pentagon has not confirmed that these troops have engaged in combat with Ukrainian troops who are inside a portion of the Kursk region, which is, as I said, near to the border of Ukraine, is in Russia, adding they're moving into Kursk for a reason. We have every expectation that they would be engaged in combat operations. There is no evidence that more North Korean troops are entering Russia, but that could change. And according to, as I just read in the Ukrainian sources, they believe that North Korea are intending to send up to 100,000. So, anyway, the Pentagon briefing is about to happen very soon. So I'm just moving my mouse around there. It kind of shows up on this screen. But I'm just sorting this out. We will go over to the Pentagon in just a minute, and you'll be able to see the updated Pentagon briefing as it happens. Let's have a look. We're there. We're there. Oh, there's our good friend Dr. Anthony Harper at the front, the Christian. He's a Christian journalist. We have him on a number of times. You see him there with the red tie on. You might have seen him, us talking to him on here before. He is actually a born-again Christian, by the way. So he might ask some Christian-related question. That would be good. But so, yeah, this is the briefing that's about to start very soon. So we'll see what the Pentagon are going to say. I would imagine there'll be a lot of talk about this situation in Ukraine. But I think as someone may have been saying in the comments, And as someone I know I spoke to earlier today, you know, these things are very concerning sometimes. This is clearly this is a concerning development at the moment. Sometimes these things get worse and then they ease off, and they get worse and they ease off. You got the whole birth pang thing. And also, as someone said to me earlier, you've got to remember that we're not the ones in control. So whatever we do, we're not in control of this, but we don't need to fear, because if you have faith, if we do have faith in God, then we know He is the one that's sovereign, and nothing gets past God. And He is the one that ultimately steers world events. So there's no need to go off into extreme fear. I think concern is fine, but we just not need to get into extreme fear. But it's definitely causes for concern in the days we're in. I do feel concerned by some of the things that you see in the world, but yeah, just to remember to take comfort in that we're not in ultimate control, but there is one who is. So, and here she comes. This is the Pentagon briefing.
All right. Good afternoon. Just a few things at the top. I can get it out. And then I'm happy to take your questions. So yesterday and today, Secretary Austin was in the Philippines, where he met with President Marcos, Secretary of National Defense Teodoro, and other government officials. This was the Secretary's fourth visit to the Philippines, the most visits ever by a U.S. Secretary of Defense, which highlights the remarkable strides the U.S. and the Philippines have made to expand and modernize the alliance and reinforced our shared vision for a free and open Indo-Pacific. To that end, let me spotlight just a few deliverables. Secretary Austin and Secretary Teodoro signed a General Security of Military Information Agreement, which is a critical step to enhance information sharing and deepen interoperability. The Secretaries also co-led the groundbreaking ceremony for a new bilateral combined coordination center. These bilateral undertakings will improve joint efforts to plan bilateral exercises and operations and humanitarian response efforts in order to address common challenges in the Indo-Pacific region. Additionally, in another example of the steadfast U.S. commitment to the Philippines and our partners and allies in the region, Secretary Austin authorized $1 million in aid and U.S. troops to assist Philippine forces in providing life-saving aid to the people of the Philippines in response to the super typhoon that made landfall a few days ago. Next, Secretary Austin will travel to Laos to participate in the Association of Southeast Asian Nations Defense Ministers meeting, Plus. We'll have a readout of that soon. And finally, the Indiana National Guard, Oklahoma National Guard, and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia announced a new partnership this week under the National Guard Bureau's State Partnership Program. The enduring partnership pairs U.S. states and foreign nations to enhance mutual relationships and promote defense and security cooperation objectives. The State Partnership Program has built relationships around the globe for more than 30 years and now includes 105 partnerships with 115 different nations. And with that, I'd be happy to take your questions. Tara.
Hi, Sabrina. So the U.S. is expected to send another $275 million in security assistance to Ukraine, announcing that later today. And I was just wondering, the president is committed to spending $7.1 billion before his term ends. How do you get there in these small increments? What is the Pentagon's thinking on this?
So, Tara, I don't have a package to announce today, but as you know, we roll out packages on a pretty regular basis. So when we have something to announce, whether it be a presidential drawdown package or a USAI package, you'll be hearing from us, of course. In terms of the $7.1 billion that we have left and that we are able to use for drawdown authority, you've heard it from here and you've heard it from the White House that we are committed to using that full authority that Congress has allotted to us. The only way we can do that also is to make sure that our shelves are fully backfilled and stocked. So as our shelves continue to get stocked with equipment and capabilities that are needed, we draw down from those and send those to Ukraine. The president has committed to, ensuring that every dollar that Congress has allocated will be spent.
But there's only, I guess, about 8 weeks left or something like that. So if you're still waiting for the stockpiles to be replenished before sending, how do you get there before January 20th?
Yep. So we're working on that every single day. This building, is working on ensuring that Ukraine has what it needs to be successful on the battlefield in the short and long term. We roll out packages frequently. I don't have one to announce today, but when we do, you're going to see that cadence continue throughout the year and through the end of the administration. Dan.
Could you talk about the decision to lift the restrictions on the use of longer-range attack missiles for the Ukrainians, and why was this decision taken when it was, after many months of saying that this was not going to happen? And then also, can you just give us an update of how many missiles have been used by the Ukrainians and roughly what they're targeting?
So, Dan, I don't have anything to announce or to confirm at this time. If we have more to share publicly, we will do so. That being said, just taking a step back to, answer kind of broad strokes some of your questions, let's not forget where we are, and that is the fact that Russia chose to escalate this war by introducing DPRK forces into the battlefield and into the fight. And so what we are doing is, as we have been from the very beginning, is ensuring that Ukraine has what it needs. So you're going to see us continue to support Ukraine with different presidential drawdown packages that are going to support its short-term and long-term needs.
Sorry, just on the North Korean troops, roughly how many there are now on the ground around Kursk, and are there indications that North Korea is ready to actually send more troops?
So in the Kursk region, what we approximate is approximately or over 11,000 DPRK troops in the Kursk region. In terms of are more going to be sent, it's certainly a possibility, but that's our initial assessment right now along Kursk. Carla.
Hey, thanks. To follow up, Ukraine fired long-range fires into Russia. Did they violate the policy, or did the U.S. policy change?
Yeah, so Carla, what I'm going to tell you is exactly what I told Dan, is I just don't have anything to announce today, and I don't have anything to confirm at this time.
Violated the policy? Did they tell us about it? I mean, did they or did they not violate the policy, or did the policy shift? Officials have told VOA that the policy has changed.
Yep. So Carla, appreciate the question, but again, I just don't have anything to announce or to confirm at this time.
And then I guess I want to ask also, since we're still unclear on whether or not the policy has changed, on the non-nuclear, the change on Russia's stance on the nuclear, the nuclear doctrine.
Sure.
Under these changes, they're saying that a large attack by a non-nuclear state that's backed by a nuclear state, which would be the United States, that would be treated as a joint assault on Russia. How concerning is that to the Pentagon, and have you changed your posture?
So we aren't surprised by Russia's update to its nuclear doctrine. It's something that they've been signaling that they intend to update over the last several weeks. It's the same irresponsible rhetoric that we've seen before, and that we've seen, frankly, for the past 2 years. So it's something that we're going to continue to monitor, but we don't have any indications that Russia is preparing to use a nuclear weapon within Ukraine, and we don't see any, we don't see any changes that need to be made to our own nuclear posture as well. Yes.
Oh, thank you, Sabrina. According to Associated Press reports, President Biden has authorized, and we've been talking about Ukraine using this U.S.-supplied long-range missiles for deeper strikes into Russia. My question is, what are the ramifications of President Biden escalating the war against Russia in light of the Russia's foreign ministry statement in Associated Press that as was stated, Putin has reaffirmed Moscow's readiness to use nuclear weapons if he sees a threat to its sovereignty, and a follow-up?
Well, let me be clear. We're not at war with Russia. And the party here that continues to escalate this war is Russia. By bringing in another foreign country into the battlefield, by bringing in over 11,000 DPRK soldiers into the fight, that is an escalatory action. And you've heard the national security advisor say yesterday that this administration told Russia that if they escalated this conflict by deploying DPRK troops, we would help Ukraine respond. Again, the parts of the war that has been escalated upon directly stem from Russia's choice and decision to invade its sovereign neighbor.
Additionally, given the joint U.S. and NATO escalation of attacks with Ukraine against Russia, and with China and North Korea joining Russia to form an alliance against the West, would not you say that World War III has begun?
I would not say that. That is not the characterization that this building assesses. And you've seen us take measures to de-escalate tensions and to, and I'm sorry, I'm just speaking like broadly around the world, but when it comes to Ukraine, the commitment of this administration from the very beginning of this war was to help Ukraine take back its sovereign territory. A decision by another country to invade its sovereign neighbor cannot go unchecked. And that's why you've seen not just the United States, but 50 or so countries all around the world come together and support Ukraine through the Ukraine Defense Contact Group. So this is a global effort to support Ukraine, but I certainly would not characterize it as that. Joseph.
Thanks. Got one on Iraq and then one on Lebanon, Israel. Sure. The Iraqi Prime Minister was speaking a short while ago, and he said that that Israel was preparing for attacks or operations inside of Iraq. Can you say anything about that? Or if you had any heads up from Israel on this?
I don't have anything for you on that, and I apologize. I haven't seen those comments either.
And then, when was the last call between the Secretary and his new Israeli counterpart? Have they only had one?
The last call was when we read it out. I think that was last week. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the exact date, but when we read out that call was the last time that they spoke.
What role is the department playing or preparing to play for a bolstered Lebanese army on the border with Israel if and when this current war ends?
You mean the Lebanese armed forces?
Yeah.
Well,
Talks with them because Israeli reports say that CENTCOM is playing a role, the Pentagon is playing a role or will play a role in strengthening this army that's supposed to deploy in greater numbers.
Well, I think what you're seeing right now, the first thing that we need to see before we get ahead of that is a ceasefire put in place on that northern border. So you're seeing administration officials continue to engage on that front. The role that CENTCOM plays in training up or equipping Lebanese armed forces in the future, I don't want to get ahead of that because we still need a ceasefire in place. So we're going to continue to push on that. Those efforts are being led, by other places in this administration, but that's certainly our focus. And should a ceasefire be able to get put into place, we'd have more to share beyond. Janie.
Thank you, Sabrina. A couple of occasions of South Korea and Russia and North Korea on the defense cost sharing. Can the defense cost sharing already decided by South Korea and the United States be nullified? Do you think the next administration on adjust it again, or you just leave their current situations?
So, Janie, I can't speak to any changes that the incoming administration would make. I can only speak to ours, and you're pretty familiar with our arrangements with the ROC. I would say, on behalf of this administration, we have enjoyed a deepening of a partnership between the Republic of Korea. We share the shared vision for a free and open Indo-Pacific. You're going to see us continue to work towards those goals and some of the benchmarks that this administration has set out from the very beginning, but I can't speak for an incoming administration.
Secondly, it was reported that the Russian government and military delegations visited North Korea and met with Kim Jong-un to discuss military cooperation. What concerns does the U.S. have regarding the discussion of additional deployment of North Korean troops?
I think I've been pretty clear from this podium, Janie, that we are certainly concerned by DPRK soldiers moving into Russia. The visitations of certain delegations to different countries, that's not surprising, but the movement of troops in and becoming co-belligerent in the war, that is certainly of concern to us. Something that we're going to continue to monitor. And, you've heard us say very publicly that we're not surprised by this deepening partnership as, the DPRK has been willing to supply Russia with ammunition or and now in this case, people to promote and to continue its war of aggression in Ukraine. So we're not surprised, but we're going to continue to monitor that.
Okay. When the United States allowing Ukraine to use long-range missiles. Does this mean it is allowing strikes against North Korea forces or against Russian forces?
So again, I don't have anything to announce or to confirm at this time, but we said very clearly that the introduction of DPRK soldiers into the fight, especially when it comes to Ukraine's sovereignty, means they are a fair game in that fight. And so, they would be considered lawful military targets. I'm going to go to the phones and then happy to come back in the room. Missy, Washington Post.
Hey, Sabrina, just following up on all the questions about the ATACMS and the reports from the Ukrainian and Russian officials that there's this new element being added to the war. I know you're not going to address those directly, but I'm wondering if you could give us, just to provide the context for the stories that we're writing about, they're writing about this topic today. Like, how do you guys see this moment in the conflict? You know, what does the Defense Department think? Can you just sort of describe how you see the battlefield equation and Ukraine's prospects for achieving its goals? Thanks.
Sure. Thanks, Missy. So if you're looking for, a broad battlefield assessment, I think what we would say is Ukraine still continues to push and hold in key areas. Without a doubt, there is still a raging fight in the east in that Donbass area. So they are, continuing to fortify their lines there. But certainly the introduction of DPRK troops into that Kursk region, has put more pressure on Ukrainian troops further up in the north. So, they're continuing to fight. And I think what's important is Kyiv still stands. President Zelensky is still, engaged and continuing to rally Ukrainians to fight against Russian aggression. And, we're certainly proud to support Ukraine in their efforts to take back their sovereign territory. I'll go to one more from the phone and then happy to come in the room. Mike Glenn, Washington Times.
I'm good. You can go on to somebody else. Thanks, Sabrina.
Do you have one more from the phone? Rio, Ashayi Shimbum.
Yeah, thank you, Sabrina. Can you hear me? I've seen media reports suggesting that China rejected a meeting with Secretary Austin during the ASEAN Defense Ministers meeting plus in Laos. Could you please confirm this report? And also, what is your take on China's rejection this time?
Yeah, thanks, Rio, for the question. We did reach out to set up a meeting. Unfortunately, that was not able to land during the secretary's travel. That being said, I would point you to the fact that the president just met with President Xi. So conversations and meetings with PRC leaders are happening at the very highest levels of government and as well in lower channels with this department and others in this administration. Great. Come back in the room. Tom.
Thanks, Sabrina. President-elect Trump has warned we're closer today to World War III than at any other time. So to sort of piggyback on some of the other questions we've heard today, like why can't the Pentagon comment publicly on this monumental decision? It's, there's no bigger story than the use of American weapons to strike inside Russia, and saying we don't have anything to announce today. It seems to be dodging the elephant in the room, which is this. Like, why can't we get something from the Pope?
Good question. Yeah.
Yeah. I understand the frustration, Tom. Look, I said, if we have more to share publicly, we will. But at this time, I just don't have anything more to share. In terms of the comments on, an escalation and a larger war, we don't share that. What we do believe is that Russia has escalated this war with bringing in, over 11,000 DPRK soldiers into the fight. And a commitment from this administration is to continue to arm Ukraine with what it needs on the battlefield. We don't see that as escalatory. We see that as a commitment that we set out from the very beginning of this administration.
Okay, thanks. And then on Lebanon, Israel's been hitting targets obviously across the country without constraint, including the strike last week in the northeast that killed 15 first responders. Does the Pentagon still fully support Israel's campaign, or is there now movement towards greater pressure on Israel to bring about a ceasefire before the end of this outgoing administration?
We have said very publicly we support Israel's rights to their self-defense. We've also said very publicly that more needs to be done to ensure that civilians are moved out of the battle space and to lessen civilian casualties. In terms of a ceasefire, we have not shied away from the fact that we have, continue to press for this both publicly and privately. More from other folks in the administration. You have seen different officials continue to travel to the region to get to a ceasefire, and that was before there was an election. That was before, we had a new incoming administration. This has been an ongoing effort by this administration to secure a ceasefire in the north, and also we want to see a ceasefire in Gaza.
Folks, I'll go to the Ukraine ambassador announcement at the UN after this. I will replay it. It's just, as you see at the top left, it's happening now. I'll show you this when this briefing is finished at the Pentagon.
Would the Pentagon be prepared to use more leverage against Israel to get more aid into Gaza, to get more civilians out of the battle space in Lebanon?
Well, we're already seeing changes, Tom. I think it was a few weeks ago, we mentioned that they have opened the Erez crossing. They've opened that Jordanian corridor again. You are seeing more aid get in. Is it enough? No, it's not enough. More needs to get in, but we are seeing a change in behavior, and that is because we are continuing to engage. We are using our leverage, and that's why we're seeing some of that progress moving forward. Yes, Chris.
Thanks, Sabrina. Can you confirm whether the USS Abraham Lincoln is still in CENTCOM or if it's departed?
The Abe has departed the CENTCOM AOR and is in 7th Fleet, is my understanding.
And will there be a carrier replacing it?
I don't have anything to announce at this time, but as you've heard us say from this podium before, we maintain significant firepower in the Central Command area of responsibility to include F-16s, F-15s, and some of the several B-52s as well. So we have a significant posture there. In the back, yeah.
Thank you, Sabrina. Regarding the Lebanon, Lebanon's army just announced that there are 3 of its soldiers have been killed in an Israeli strike on their position in the village of Sarafand in the south of Lebanon. So first of all, do you have any comments about this news? And do you support a self-defense for the Lebanon army?
So I'm not aware of the reports that you're citing, but certainly what we've said is, we don't want to see Lebanese armed forces get in the crossfire of any operations on that northern border. But I don't have any more details to provide on that. Again, we have supported and have trained and equipped LAF forces before. In terms of what the future holds, again, what we're focused on is ensuring that a ceasefire can be put into place. Yeah, of course. Charlie.
Thank you. Have you seen, or do you have reason to believe that more North Korean troops are headed to Russia? Do we have a better idea of what the ones that are there are doing?
So we haven't seen more moving in other than that 11,000 or, probably over 11,000 in the Kursk region. I think we could certainly see more move in. But at this time, our assessment is that, it's over 11,000 DPRK soldiers embedding with Russian forces.
Engaged in combat.
We've seen those reports, reportedly engaged in combat. Do we expect that to be the case? Absolutely. They're moving there for a reason. We expect them to be engaged in combat. We just can't independently confirm that that has actually started. But absolutely, they're moving into that Kursk region for a very specific reason, which is clearly to engage Ukrainian forces. So we, have seen those reports, and we would expect them to engage in combat soon. I just can't confirm that that's started.
Okay, and I know it's a touchy issue, but ATACMS or long range or however we're describing them, the Russians claimed they intercepted some of those missiles. Is there a comment from DoD on that?
I don't have a comment on that. Constantine.
Thanks, Sabrina. Overnight, it seems like 2 undersea cables were cut in the Baltic. German officials saying they suspect suicide. Does the Pentagon have an independent assessment on this reporting?
So we've seen some of those reporting, and it's something that we're looking into, but I just at this time don't have anything more to provide, but it is something that we'll continue to look into.
Is there a world where the Pentagon sends expertise, military assets to aid in this investigation?
Potentially if asked, but at this moment, I'm not tracking that anyone has. I think they're very capable people in the region that can do their assessment. But of course, if we're asked to assist in any way, I'm sure we would be happy to. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, there you go. That was the Pentagon briefing. I'm just going to quickly get this, because as you saw in the top left, there was a briefing that happened, by Ukraine. It was the ambassador, the United Nations representative of Ukraine. He made some remarks on there. So, that was going on at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I've clipped it from our live link, and I'm going to put it in here. And we're going to be able to watch it as well. So I'm going to replay. That was 10 minutes ago. I'm going to replay that on here so we can watch those remarks that were given there. It's at the United Nations, so I'll change that to United Nations. Oops. United Nations. Okay, I'll play this and we'll see what the remarks were given by the Ukrainian ambassador at the United Nations.
No. Héctor, ¿qué tal? Anche. Barbara! I was wondering where she is.
Barbara, no, presidency. Absolutely, I have presidency. Okay, thank you.
All right. A very good afternoon to all of you. And I thank my dear colleagues for joining me today. I would like to read out a statement on behalf of Ukraine, Albania, Andorra, Argentina, Australia, Austria, Belgium, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Bulgaria, Canada, Croatia, Cyprus, Czechia, Denmark, Ecuador, Estonia, Finland, France, Luxembourg, Malta, Marshall Islands, Federal State of Micronesia, Monaco, Montenegro, the Netherlands, New Zealand, North Macedonia, Norway, Palau, Paraguay, Poland, Portugal, Republic of Moldova, Republic of Korea, Romania, San Marino, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, Uruguay, the United Kingdom, the United States of America, and the European Union. Today we mark a grim milestone. 1,000 days since the start of Russia's unprovoked and unjustified full-scale invasion of Ukraine. This ongoing aggression remains a flagrant violation of the principles of the UN Charter that all member states have committed to uphold. We reaffirm our strong commitment to the sovereignty, independence, unity, and territorial integrity of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders, and reiterate that the attempted illegal annexation of parts of sovereign territory of Ukraine by Russia has no validity under international law and does not form the basis for any alteration of their status. We condemn Russia's unabated, indiscriminate attacks on densely populated residential areas and civilian critical infrastructure in Ukraine, in violation of international humanitarian law, which increase on a daily basis the toll of casualties, displacement, and destruction. We are committed to ensuring accountability for crimes under international law and justice for all victims of this aggression, particularly children. This commitment is essential for preventing future atrocities across the globe. We reiterate that the protection of civilians and provision of humanitarian assistance to those in need remain crucial for alleviating the human suffering caused by Russia's aggression. We are deeply concerned about the adverse impact of the war on global food security, energy, nuclear security, and safety, and the environment. The war must end. We reiterate our demand that Russia ceases its use of force against Ukraine and immediately, completely, and unconditionally withdraw all of its military forces from the territory of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders. We stand firm and united in our resolve for a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace for Ukraine, consistent with the UN Charter, including the principles of sovereign equality and territorial integrity of states. We reiterate our calls upon UN member states and international organizations to redouble support for diplomatic efforts to implement such a peace, enshrined in the UN General Assembly Resolution ES 11/6, principles of the Charter of the United Nations underlying a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace in Ukraine of February 23, 2023. We commend in this regard the Summit of Peace for Ukraine held in Switzerland on 15-16 June 2024 and the follow-up activities. 1,000 days of war is a tragic reminder of the need to remain resolute in ensuring the international law prevails, not just in Ukraine, but wherever it is challenged. And I thank you. I would like to thank my colleagues once again for joining me. Thanks a lot.
There's some, if Ukraine used long-range U.S.-provided missiles to fire into Russia today?
You will have a full explanation of that in the evening news in Ukraine.
Mr. Ambassador, I'm Camelia Entekhabi Fard, the chief editor of the Independent Persian. Do we are on a brink of the World War III now, as the current situation is escalating between Russia, US, and Ukraine? And can you please tell us how could we prevent it if such a thing is happening, might happening before President Trump taking power? Thank you.
Well, it's such a long question. It's very difficult to answer this very multi-layered question of yours, but I think that our position is very strong. We have to make the Russians sit down at the table of negotiations, and the only way to do it is by strength. All rounds of consultations and negotiations, and we saw lately how latest telephone calls provoked unprecedented attack of Ukraine rather than help us convince the Russians to talk. So the strength is the answer. All right?
We shouldn't be worried about the World War III.
We have to be united to prevent the war. And then after all, I mean, I don't believe that anyone in the Russian leadership is brave enough to commit a suicide. People are very weak in Russia.
Sorry, sir. You mean they are not brave enough to using the nuclear bomb?
I think that President Putin was explained very well a while ago what would happen if he dares to do the things that he threatens the Western world with. All right? Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Wow. Strong words there. There's interesting right at the end there, those questions and the responses that were given. So there we go, folks. That's the latest on what's going on. This is just an ambassador's speech to the Ukraine at the United Nations, and also we watched the live update from the Pentagon. So that's basically what's been going on. This is the current developments. Keeping an eye on world events, remembering the wars and rumours of wars is part of the days obviously we're in, and not to fear that, but also to keep an eye on the developments in the world, and that's what we're doing here. We're bringing you the latest updates. If you've just joined us in the last while, then please do scan the live video back to the beginning, and I did a brief update there in terms of some of the events that have been unfolding just today and yesterday. You can scan the live video back to the beginning. If you enjoy these live news world event updates, please do join us again when we go live. It really is good to have you with us, and I hope these professional live links help you to see, away from the mainstream, the current situation in the world, which we're paying a license to do, so it's all above board. So please do subscribe and click all notifications so you get an update when we go live next, so we can keep up with world events. If you want to support this work, you can become a channel member or help us out in the links in the video description. So for now, I will call it a day there, and if anything unfolds, anything develops that's really significant and we need to talk about or want to talk about, then I will go live at any point. So please do subscribe, get the notifications to see the moment we do go live if you want to keep up with the work we're doing here. So I hope you keep your faith in the midst of this world at this time. Remember to keep our eyes on things above. We do have that peace and comfort in our heart, and because otherwise, without the faith, you really would start to probably go mad and panic in this world. So it's not worth that. So keep your eyes. We've got to keep our eyes on that. This world is not our home ultimately. So, and whatever happens, we're going to be there soon. So take care, everyone, and thank you very much. Goodbye.